Alright, so this project I've called the Timber Terrace, and I wanted to do a behind the scenes of how I actually did this project. So I ended up filming my entire process. This was over about 8 hours of work, and I thought it was actually quite interesting to, look back and actually see how I did this, because you never really think about your own workflow that much. You just kind of do what you need to do. But this was a really good learning experience. So what you can see here is I've started out by modeling the individual unit, which would then be hot linked into another file. So you can just see me do some really high level modeling of the walls of one of the units that would then be duplicated. And I'm just starting to do some more individual elements like the staircase. And as I do this, I'm making sure to name and kind of put things in folders like per level, because organization is really important. And if you don't stay on top of it for a project like this, it becomes a massive task at the end to try to name things and, put things in the correct folders. So a fun part of this design was actually the terrace at the top. So I was kind of modeling that. So now I've just made another file, which is going to be the main file, and I've just linked that in now. So you got file, link, and then basically I'm just duplicating this linked file, and I'm stepping it down, because that was kind of the main idea for the project, was that it kind of stepped down a street. So I've kind of started to initially model the street, the road, the footpath, the driveway, the fence in front of the townhouses. And so I think it's really helpful when you start a project like this to really figure out what your shot's going to be. So that's kind of one of the first things that I did, was I actually created a camera and I just planned my shot, and so I could actually see how many townhouses I needed for it to be able to fit in the frame. So this street furniture, and the kind of driveway, that was quite tricky because I had to figure out what actually was involved, what actually went into the townhouse hotlink, and then what was live in the main file. So that was kind of a bit of an experiment, and I ended up doing something a little bit different later on, as you'll see. But doing it in this view and then taking one of these back over to the hotlink file to then get kind of duplicated down was ended up to be my process. So you can see here, I've just copied that back into the individual file, and I've just started modeling a little bit more, kind of working with the slope of the street. And then this is me kind of relinking that back in and just figuring out how on earth to work with these levels, because even though they're an even step, it is actually quite challenging to make sure that everything kind of touches everything, and kind of flows seamlessly. So I then just started working on how I would do, like a little berm or kind of a planter in front of the footpath, as well as that driveway crossover. So this was kind of the first pass that I had at it, but I ended up doing something a little bit different later on, as you'll see. But you can actually see my workflow isn't really as efficient as you might think it is. I'm really just trying to figure out how to do things as I go, and I think a workflow it's probably something that gets refined over time. So you can see I'm starting to make these windows, the metal, the joinery around the windows, because I think that's going to impact the render quite a lot when we just test ideas like this. And then I've just started to create a bit of a balustrade within the apartments. And this is just kind of a batten screen that goes all the way up. And I did do an interior for this job, so you can kind of see that later. I mean, it's not fully kind of built out, but it's pretty decent. This project really was focused on that exterior shot, and that was kind of like what I initially sketched. So that was my primary focus. But I did care about getting the stair balustrade right and making sure that all these battens kind of follow up properly. I thought it would be quite a cool idea to have these floating timber stairs and then a very solid concrete kind of base right on the ground floor, and you kind of step up on this really solid, concrete step, and then you just, you got the floating steps. So I thought that was quite fun. But yeah, I did spend quite a bit of time getting these battens right, and it probably wasn't really worth it because I only did one pretty minor shot in the first level, so you never actually see any of this, but I thought it would be fun anyway. And, it might be useful for you to see how this kind of thing is achieved. So just a little bit more refinement on the interior stuff, and then I was just working on like the floor, the stair intersection, making sure that it all worked. And then just getting that joinery in there with an array modifier, so you can really start to see the primary architectural features. I probably spent a little bit too much time on this because I was modeling all the little rails that the joinery slides on. But, I'm pretty obsessed about the details, so that's why I did it. I think there's quite a lot of good add-ons that can probably do this really easily for you. But I don't know, I just wanted to do it from scratch. I find that kind of thing quite fun. And then once I did the ground floor, I could just kind of copy that up and change a few things because the first floor isn't actually a sliding door. So I just got rid of a little bit of that detail. And then I just started to create some separate elements for like the deck and making sure that looking forwards it's going to work with, from a PBR standpoint. So making sure that any elements that actually need to be separated are separated. I then got a material set up from my Glowbox project. So I thought it looked quite good as the kind of batten gate and also just the general cladding color. I thought it was quite nice. And you can also get this. You can download this and have a look at how I did everything. It's got like 20 interior assets and quite a lot of trees and grass and plants and stuff, so you can check that out. There's a link in the description. You can also use that in your own projects and kind of just learn about, my workflow. So that might be interesting to you. So I kind of started to model these screens, and they were a really important aspect of this project because they kind of helped to create a lot of variation and break up something that was pretty ordinary. So immediately I knew that these screens, they're like moving screens that can kind of open and close. I knew that I wanted them to be kind of different for each one, so slightly open by a few degrees. So I started to mock one of these up, as you can see here, because they're kind of different sizes, because the top one's covering the glass balustrade, but the bottom one isn't. That's why I did that. And then I just wanted to get some power lines in there just for the hell of it. And it was a really cool idea that I've never really done something like that before, so I just wanted to get something like that in immediately. And then I just started to make a few more options for the screens, and I just mocked that up with one of the townhouses before I kind of rolled that out. And the material for this is pretty much the same as like the garage door. I initially didn't have two of those little kind of boxes in the center where they meet because there actually needs to be a hinge there. I just had one, so I just needed to fix that, and it actually helped a lot. So I kind of brought those across, and I wanted to basically create every single 5-degree increment for these screens so that it was really easy for me to just kind of like grab and then put into each one. And if it was just for this project, I probably wouldn't do this, but I wanted like this to be added to my asset library, so I wanted to spend the time now and actually like create, something that was able to be rolled out in other projects too. So I started out doing the top one, and then I wanted to do the bottom one as well. But I kind of spent, I was just bringing those in initially. And you can see I'm just doing the bottom ones now. It's literally the same process, but it is quite time consuming. I was very frustrated by this. And so you can see I'm rolling out these screens on the top now. And I'm just kind of like working with each unit, making sure that I'm not, picking the same angle, just to create that kind of that life in the design and making sure that it's not all uniform. It was actually quite fun once I'd made the screens to, pick and choose and put things on there. It was just a setting up that was a real pain. And as I was doing this, I was making sure to kind of save each screen into its own folder that relates to the townhouse, because it's really important that they all kind of relate to each other and they're easy to find. So now I'm just kind of adding some initial materials like the concrete, the glass, the aluminium. And I think this is like a really big stage when you actually finally get to see what the damn thing looks like. But it's really important that you take the time before and just get everything set up correctly. So the decking was basically the same cladding setup, and I just put that on a slab that was kind of like dark, so it almost looks like it's on like a dark structure, so it's like floating, which is quite cool. I wanted to add a skylight in there too, so I was just adding that in, and I thought it would be quite cool to see that kind of thing, you know, with quite a lot of diffuse light coming in through the stair shaft. So I'll probably do a few more interior renders and see how that looks, but that's it's got a lot of good potential. I was also just doing all the UVing for this, making sure that it all worked. That's kind of another big stage that can be a real pain, but it's really important to get right. I use the Texel Density plugin for this, and I find it's like really good at setting the right scale for the UVs. And then I just subdivided these and just made sure that the displacement worked with the floor. But I had a few problems with that, so I just ended up using the normal map. So I'm just setting up some initial kind of kitchen elements in the interior, just some blocks, and just kind of blocking out this space. It's actually quite a fun process, but as you'll see soon, I actually ran out of space, so I had to kind of fudge it a little bit. But I'm just figuring out where the windows, the doors, the benches, that kind of thing go. And I knew that I wanted this to be all clad with timber on the inside, besides the wall, the floor and the ceiling. So I was just adding these into their own respective folders. And then adding in some windows as well, just in those areas. I probably spent a little bit too much time like messing around with that, and I could have done it better. But as I said before, you don't really control your workflow as you do it that much. So that was just one of those things. If I actually got like a FBX or an OBJ from an architect, then all this would be done, by the way. But because this is one of my own projects, and I typically model my own projects in Blender, I have to do all this. So it's just testing this with some initial lighting, making sure that the materials were all applied, and I realized that they weren't. I think there was like some dark black materials in the interior, so I needed to fix that quickly. So you can see that ceiling needed to be, white paint or something. And it's a really good idea to test what this looks like in cycles pretty quickly, so you can just pick up little errors like that. And I thought this time of day was really quite fun. It's quite a fun. Why am I saying fun? It's quite a dramatic sunsetty kind of vibe. So I started getting in some interior finishings from my pack that I made. And you'll get all this if you download the file. So just getting in the sink and everything. I modeled all this from scratch, and I'm actually really proud of it. I'm not usually a bit of a modeler, but I thought it came out quite well. Got the stovetop on there. And I actually brought in a island from another job of mine, so I thought I'd use that instead, and it just kind of saves time, and it was the vibe that I wanted, so it's got this cool ribbed base on it. I had to spend a bit of time just kind of like playing around with it because the sink location wasn't really where it should be. So I had to just mess around with that a little bit. But yeah, that's quite a cool island. It's very good for apartments and that kind of thing. It just adds a little bit more life to the design. So I also brought in some cabinetry from another one of my jobs to just make my life a little bit easier, because when you're doing a job like this, if you've done it before, just reuse it. And if you do this professionally, you'll understand the importance of reusing assets to save time. So I just had to kind of rescale these cabinets just to suit the new space, and then I did also have to just update the UVs. A little bit of messing around, but I think it's worth it, because it's got all those nice shadow lines and, you know, all the nice little interior design elements that are pretty cool. So then I was just adding some more details to where the fridge would be. Some more shadow lines, and then I was just adding in this material, this timber veneer material, to kind of all the kitchen elements, and just making sure that the rotation was correct and the UV mapping was correct. This was a very big step because it just showed the design a lot easier. In this previous design, I didn't actually do a shot from the back, so you didn't see that cabinetry there, but I had to do it for this. So I was just adding some sheets of plywood basically, and that kind of clad the outside of the bathroom. So that's something that I do quite a lot, and then I just make the one behind dark, so you see a little bit of a negative kind of gap. And then I was just working on the stairs and making sure that the stairs had their own material, and so did the battens. I had to make sure that the battens got procedurally kind of, the UVs got randomly moved around, because that's kind of my special node setup. But yeah, it took a little bit of time to get that working. I think I had to apply the modifier for it to work, which is a little frustrating. But yeah, it is what it is. But you can start to see like how nice this interior kind of design is. Well, I'm not tooting my horn. Like, just in terms of the vibe and the feeling, it's quite light and just nice to be in. And I think I'm going to be able to get some good interior shots out of this. And that staircase also is like quite a nice feature. So I also wanted to take some tube lights from my urban cabin project, and I just kind of like changed them a little bit and worked with it. So I did kind of a bit of a draft lighting setup where I isolate all the walls in the first story, and then I just kind of move these lights around and make sure that they're all kind of in the right location. And then just adding in all the furniture from my furnishing pack. You can actually get these online as well. There's a link in the description. I lovingly made all of this furniture from scratch, and I'm really proud of it. So you can see I actually had to move all this stuff up the page, because there was literally no space for the couch and the dining table. So I actually had to like basically fudge the interiors. The butler's pantry right at the back had to just get destroyed basically, because you don't see it, and it's more important that the spaces feel accurate. So yeah, the space between the dining table and the couch, that's really important that it feels spacious, because the spaces between spaces are important. I don't know if that makes any sense. But just spatially, you can also look at the average distance that these elements need to be from each other online. I just kind of know that off by heart, so that's why I don't need to do that. I was just getting some other elements in there, like some pendant lights and some books and some whiskey and stuff, all the stuff I've made. So all the materials, everything in this project I've actually made myself, which I'm pretty proud of. So you can see I'm just kind of testing the lighting out and making sure it's all good, but really I actually have to go into this main file to check the lighting because it's based off the exposure and the HDRI in the main file, not in this file. So I then worked on the road, and I got a road material in there that I worked on, and just kind of refining the materials a little bit more. So this street and road and footpath, that's super important for this project, and I actually haven't really done something like this before, so I was really excited to see what I could do with this. I feel like a street render is just a real classic that I haven't really had the chance to work on. So yeah, I really wanted to make sure it was as good as possible. And so you can see me subdividing all this. There's some subtle kind of displacement in the road texture that I wanted it to come out. So that's why I did that. And then I kind of messed around a little bit when it comes to the where the trees and the bushes and driveway crossover goes. You'll see here I kind of I didn't really do the best workflow for that, but I came back and redid it. So you can see me adding in the trees from my tree pack. They're actually not available online. You can only get these through this project that you download. So that's just something to bear in mind. But I started getting these smaller trees in here. And I wanted, just something pretty low scale in front of the townhouses. And then I was also just moving the bigger ones around to make sure that the light was a good quality and not too intense. And then just scattering on those little planes that I made from my vegetation pack. So I was just trying to find the right scale. I literally just used the particle system, the here particle system, and then just worked with the size and the amount and rotation and everything. It's really straightforward. And then just that was only for the grass and stuff. And then for the bushes, I actually did move those manually because I really wanted to find a good balance with that. You can see just me tweaking the camera a little bit just to make sure that it feels quite balanced. And then just adding another tree on the left-hand side to kind of frame that shot a little bit more. I kept testing this and playing around with that because the foreground framing and all that foreground element stuff is super, super important. It's how your eyes actually enter into the scene. So you really need to spend the time and make sure that you're framing your shot correctly. I then just tested out a few more options, just out of curiosity, seeing what I could do. I think I will probably do a vertical shot of this at some point. I do like to do like a horizontal and a vertical. I was then just kind of messing around with the power lines a little bit and making a slight curve on them just for a little bit more realism and just kind of breaking them up, making them a little bit, more overlappy and a little bit more power liney, if that makes sense. And then just in this foreground, just creating some vegetation that it may or may not work, but it's there. And then I was just doing some kind of basic color correction in Camera Raw. I've used DaVinci Resolve and I've used GIMP, but I'm really fast and efficient at Camera Raw, which is Photoshop. But you can literally do this in any software that you're the most efficient in. And that's literally it. I did a bit of a high pass filter. And this is the final result. So I hope you found this useful and enjoyable. You can check my Instagram out in the link in the description and also get this project. I hope you find it useful and you learn a lot. And if you're interested in getting feedback on your work or you just want to be a part of an amazing community, you can check out my free Discord below. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.